Villagraph gazed in awe and terror at the massive spinning cyclone of crimson and violet clouds that permeated the bright blue sky. The shadow sand soared above the distant swamplands, pouring demons from the shadow world into this one. Queen Etheria had shippingly tasked him with dealing with this threat, but it's clear she didn't understand just how powerful this thing was. But Vigor of the Red could not turn back now. He sent scouts to rally up a larger army and report this calamity to the Queen. But until then, he had to push back against this evil and save these lands from corruption. Him, along with his brigade of 1,000 of the kingdom's best soldiers, trudged forward. The world was counting on him. That's a planet inhabited by many species, mostly humans, dwarves, and elves. You arrive at the western region of the Depla Highlands. You stand in the desert, surrounded by cacti, fallen pillars, and tumbleweed. A snowy plain to the south. To the east, mountainous plains, and beyond that, a jungle. To the north, an active volcano. To the far northeast, a floating swamp. Vigra's army backed away in horror as the fallen dwarf engineers faded away into a dark mist. These enemies weren't real. At the town hall, Vigra found the real occupants of the town barricaded inside, who described an evil mist that had spread in and created evil shadows of their residents. They vowed their allegiance to his cause in return for saving them. The mudballs faded away into mist as they died, but the bodies of Vigrav's army remained. He realized now that he would lose the war if this persisted. He had to find Popo and hope that this dwarf was as legendary as the resident dwarves claimed. Pushing out of the desert, trees became more clumped and the environment more habitable. Much to Vigrav's relief, Rio Centaur archers joined the fray of battle and helped to push away the tyrannical mist. In the distance, a blaze had been set, but was quickly extinguished by the centaurs. Emerging from the smoke was a large dwarf who accompanied the forest creatures. Thank goodness you showed up, he boomed out to them. Name's Popo, pleasure to meet you. Suffering minimum casualties under both Vigrav and Popo's leadership, the army trudged forward into the cold, which only served to seep deeper and deeper into their bones the further they traveled. Why are we going this way, Popo? Asked Vigrav. Popo grunted. There is someone out here who might know about that swirling Hell's Gate. He's an old friend of mine. Vigrav stared out from the battlements of the castle, hoping desperately to see the outline of reinforcements appear from the mist in the distance. I suggest we look for Simon, said Popo as he warmed his massive hands over top of our pit. If we stay here, the cold will only weaken us more. Vigrav shook his head angrily. No, we will wait, declared, my queen will not fail me. The army, once composed of 1,000 strong men, now reduced to only 300, moved at a crawling pace. Why are we moving so slow? Asked Popo. Vigrav ignored the question, which irritated the giant dwarf. Do you still wait for your queen to save you? He boomed, causing Vigrav to stop. We're alone out here, Vigrav. No one is coming to save us. Vigrav sagged his head, defeated. Both man and monster joined forces against such a hopeless evil. Hardened soldiers walked beside giant gorillas who were followed by dwarves and centaurs. None spoke a word, but all understood that the swirling vortex that permeated the orange evening sky was far more important than their differences. If Vigra failed to stop this evil now, then all life on Urloa, could die. There was a break in the onslaught as the succubus were struck by a bright and powerful light. From the jungle, a group of paladins emerged, purging the air of the darkness. Hurry, one of them yelled. Simon is in danger. If we don't move fast, he will be slain. Vigrav's instinct was to question the circumstances, but Popo's booming voice ordered the army forward, reminding him of what was at stake. With one last blast of ice, Simon sent off the last of the shadows before collapsing into Popo's arms. "Are you well?" asked Popo, to which the wizard replied in a calm yet sad voice, "Yes, I am fine. You're all here, that's all that matters." Vigoroth stepped forward and spoke. "Wizard, under order of Queen Etheria, I demand you to explain to us what's happening." "We have the wizard," shouted Vigoroth to Popo. "We wait for my queen's reinforcements." To that, Simon grounded. "They won't make it," Simon said. "The shadows have consumed the waters around this island." Vigoroth shrugged his shoulders, losing the one thing he had held out hope for. "Then what?" he asked. Simon replied, "We must reach Cassandra's castle. The beacon is there." "There are two beacons that I must activate," Simon explained as they traversed the thick jungle. "One is in Cassandra's castle in the citadel, which will open the bridge to the oasis, and the other is in the volcano in the oasis, which will take us to the swamplands." The paladins surrounding Simon explained that reinforcements were stationed on the other side of the mountain the citadel rested atop. "The beacons were originally meant for Queen Cassandra to travel around the island without disruption," explained Simon. Vigoroth paused. "Queen Cassandra?" he asked. Simon nodded. "We do not acknowledge your Queen Etheria here. I have spent decades helping keep her influence out." To that, Vigoroth was baffled. How could anyone be so opposed to His Majesty? The female warrior collapsed as the shadow faded away. "I can't believe you stood toe-to-toe with that thing." Popo shouted to her as Simon addressed her wounds. With an incantation, a yellow aura appeared around her, and she sat up. Vigoroth approached. "Who are you?" he asked. His red eyes found hers. "I am Kara," she muttered. "Protector to Queen Cassandra." A beam of light shot into the crimson sky as the sun set. The beacon had been activated. "A light bridge to Paradise Island has been opened," Simon explained, resting beside his mighty dragon. "Once there, I can activate the beacon on the volcano to open the bridge to the swamplands." Vigoroth nodded and spoke. "There are reinforcements in the nearby trading town?" Simon nodded and replied, "I pray they're all still alive." As the fight wore on, soldiers who had been hiding in their houses emerged like a plague and began helping Vigoroth and his army fend off the massive shadow. As it faded away, they offered their gratitude and their lives to his conquest. Vigoroth looked over his army of hardened friends, soldiers, and beasts alike, and felt a sense of pride he had forgotten. Maybe he really could make a difference. Several soldiers protested as Vigoroth ordered them to advance to the mountain wasteland. He turned and saw their eyes full of fear and weariness, so he made his stand. "You may leave, if you wish," he shouted to his army. "I will not force you to march to your death." To his surprise, not a single soldier fled, and they returned a gaze of newfound confidence. The heat was intense as they breached the island, but Simon used his ice magic to harden the lava. Popo nudged Vigoroth's shoulder. "You think we can kill that thing?" the dwarf whispered, nodding up at the massive demon who sat atop of the volcano and glared down at them. Vigoroth looked back at his army and smiled slowly. He offered Popo a reply. "The demon should be the one asking that question, my good friend." "My queen!" Kara cried as she collapsed before the beautiful woman atop a unicorn. "I have failed you, my queen, and I can never be forgiven. Please execute me. Grant me an honorable death." Queen Cassandra smiled warmly at Kara, then her expression turned to fear as she caught Vigoroth's gaze. "Hurt her, and I'll skin you alive," he growled. The queen chuckled and replied shakily, "Don't worry, I would never."